Hello everyone, it's Vince Singing again, and welcome to another steamy, potentially erotic edition of Classic Pasta Critiques. This is going to be the first video in a while that I've done that is not a stream, which is a big landmark for me, I guess. Now, I've as much as I do enjoy the streams and interacting with an audience, the real truth of the matter was that I was kind of using it as a crutch. One of the faults I have, as you no doubt noticed many times watching these videos, is that I have trouble speaking and really formulating thoughts, and streams kind of like put my mind off of that shortcoming I have. And while I do thoroughly enjoy interacting with the chat and riffing off of them and reading their comments, I think it's kind of become a crutch for me, and it kind of runs the risk of having my channel become even more stagnant than it already is. I'm going to continue doing the streams. I'm not, going to cut that out entirely, but I thought a return to form would be appropriate so I can finally, like, gradually work my way into being semi competent when it comes to narration and, putting my thoughts together. So this is String Theory, classic creepypasta that I haven't seen in some time, and is credited to someone called Tesla. I don't know if that's a person or just the entire company of Tesla themselves. So, I mean, it's multifaceted. They make cars and spooky stories. I have a vague recollection of how this goes down, and it's one of those things where I come into this with some moderate expectation based on vague memories, and I'm kind of hoping that they don't kind of just whitewash any enjoyment I might get out of it, because I can vaguely recall certain plot points. But we'll only know until we get into it. Have you ever had an experience that suggested someone else was in your home and just thought, I don't want to know, and left it? Sometimes the fear of the unknown just seems like the Sometimes the fear of unknown just seems like the preferable option than facing a real concrete danger. Normally it's nothing, though. One time, the beeper function on my wireless house phone went off when I was the only one home. It could only be called in from the living room. Another time, I swear someone took change from my desk. They're all possibly just slightly disconcerting tricks of memory. But what would you do when something truly suggestive appears? Would you run or just ignore like I did? Last Monday was a normal day. I got up, brushed my teeth, changed into my school clothes, all little parts of my morning ritual. It seemed like it would be another totally unnoteworthy day until I saw the strings. There were 3 or 4 thick twined strings in my room. They crisscrossed between the walls around my bed, one attached to the door. No way would I have missed them before. I should have tripped over them. They were tied to pins in the walls, which also had not existed before 10 seconds ago. Nobody could have been in my room while I was in it, let alone set this up. It was early, and my brain wasn't processing correctly. I simply discredited the site, untied the strings, and left for school, leaving them balled up on my desk. It didn't get any better later. Outside my house, there were hundreds of them, tied between houses, around cars, across streets. This had to be some super elaborate prank. One of these hidden camera shows or a comedy improv blog. They had gotten everyone else to play along too. Passers-by were tangled in them, tying them to objects. They were walking. Passers-by were tangled in them, tying them to objects they were walking towards and away from, as if they had been and were continuing to follow the course laid out for them. I nervously continued my journey to school. On the bus, everyone except me was tied to the door. At school, groups of my friends were tied together. Teachers were tied to their desks and boards. Oddly enough, at this point, all I could wonder is why I had been left out. When my friend Lucy sat beside me in first period, she simply plonked her bag down on my lap and rested her hand on her chin, looking right past me at the window outside. To the window outside. "Hey, Lucy." No response. "Come on, Lucy. I didn't expect you to be in on this too." Sorry. "Come on, I didn't expect you to be in on this too. Damn it." Whatever. She sighed and started taking books out of her bag. All the books were tied to her hands. I grinned and yanked one of the strings off the book. She didn't seem to notice, instead simply discarding the book completely, letting it drop to the floor without a moment's hesitation. I leaned down, picking up her book and placing it back on her desk. She took no notice. "Well, if that's how we're gonna play it," I smiled, trying to look playful, but really just trying to hide my nervousness. I bundled all the strings attached together in one hand and pulled them all free. She blinked, turning to stare at me. "Holy crap, Martin, you're like a ninja or something." "I've been sitting here for maybe 10 minutes. I smiled again, relieved that my friend had finally noticed me. "Where did all these strings come from?" she gasped, seemingly noticing them from the first time. "I assumed that you were all fucking with me." She stood up, backing into a corner. No one else in class noticed. "They weren't just here a minute ago. Do you see them too?" Her tone made it clear that she was genuinely scared. "No, didn't you?" I was interrupted by the teacher slamming the door behind her. Everyone except Lucy and me and Lucy remembered a good morning, and still no one seemed to pay attention to either of us. No one seemed to pay either of us any notice. "People have been ignoring me all day," I said before turning to our teacher. "Hey, dumb bitch! You can't teach for shit!" No reaction. I'm getting away with all this. Wait, what? Also, excuse me. I'm getting away from all this shit. Lucy, that's a terrible read. I'm getting away from all this shit. That wasn't any better. Lucy pulled a few strings aside and left the class. I followed, and surprise, surprise, no one else noticed. We wandered the corridors, leaving and entering classes as we saw fit. Whenever we untied a chair or book from someone else, it was like it suddenly didn't matter to them. It didn't exist. I showed her the street outside. There were more strings than when I came in this morning, twice as many. We carefully picked our way through the tangle, making our way to a nearby coffee shop. Not particularly grand, I know, but what would you do in our situation? As I said, fear of the unknown sometimes seems like a safer option. On a few occasions, I suggested we untie a few more people. Lucy was opposed to it. Remember how terrified she'd been. In the coffee shop, we grabbed a couple of sandwiches and drinks from the fridge. We found a table, untied all the strings attached to the chairs, and sat down. We both ate in silence, both of us too scared, both of us distracting ourselves by watching strangers in the shop, oblivious to the strings. After 20 minutes, Lucy spoke up. "Now she's going to take that sandwich," she said, pointing to a woman across the shop. Sure enough, she walked to the fridge and took out a plastic-wrapped sandwich that she was tied to. She pays for it and leaves. She did so, according to the prophecies of the strings. That guy didn't intend to pay. I watched the man took his coffee and ran out of the store. The two servers looking just too exasperated to go after him. "This is horrible," she whimpered. "Let's go, please." Outside wasn't much better. Everyone just followed the strings instructions, going about their daily lives. Lucy announced that she was going home to sleep all this off, and I agreed to walk her home. She only lived 10 minutes away. Away from the busier part of town, there were fewer strings. It was nicer. We could pretend it wasn't happening. When we turned to Lucy Street, she stopped, her mouth falling open. "What now?" I broke the silence, my voice sounding surprisingly small. "Look." She pointed outside one of her neighbor's houses. I saw it clearly, and I'll take my memory of that moment to the day I die. A dark little imp, maybe 3 feet tall, walking along with his knuckles on the ground, almost like a monkey. It had 2 bulbous yellow eyes taking up half its face, no mouth and none of the other facial features. It was holding a hammer and a ball of twine, which was letting out behind it, which it was letting out behind it. It quickly and quietly, it walked quickly and quietly from the front door of the house to the mailbox. It stopped, hammered a nail into the side of a mailbox, and tied a string around it, and turned to face us. It stopped when it spotted us. My bottom fell out even further than it had already been. What? My bottom fell out even further than it already... Okay, I read that right. But it just stared at us with a look of surprise and curiosity. You could almost say there was a more frightened one. You can almost say that it was the more frightened one. Suddenly, it beckoned us with its tiny hand. I looked at Lucy. She hadn't moved. I looked back at the imp, which stared at me. I had the distance between us, and then had it again. This wasn't fear of the unknown anymore. It was fear of this little guy. Didn't seem like anything to be scared of. When I was a meter away from it, it extended its hand. Hi. I shook it. It nodded in approval, blinking its massive yellow eyes at me. So, you're the one in charge of the strings? It nodded eagerly. I called Lucy over, but she stayed where she was. Are there more of you? Another nod. I wanted to ask so many questions about what it was and where it came from, but it seemed now I was only stuck with yes or no questions. Do we even have free will? It just looked at me, almost sadly. I immediately felt sick to my stomach, and I couldn't bear looking at the little monster anymore. I grabbed Lucy, who was listening to our exchange, and now sat on the curb with her head in her hands. Come on. We entered her house, and I made her a cup of tea. When I found her in the living room, she had untied her dog and curled up with it, crying. I sat the tea down and sat beside him. I'm so scared, she whispered after a good 10 minutes of sobbing. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I'm going to sleep, she muttered suddenly, and was under within a minute. Sleep was starting to sound pretty good all of a sudden. Sleep was starting to sound pretty good all of a sudden. My eyelids suddenly felt like they were being weighed down. I collapsed to the rug, and the last thing I heard before I fell asleep was the scurrying of several sets of little feet nearby. I felt much better the next day, as if the whole affair had just been a dream. I'd probably have believed it if I hadn't been woken by Lucy's mother that morning, wondering what I was doing sleeping over without permission or something. Over breakfast, Lucy asked me why I looked so pale and nervous. I turned to her and smiled, mumbling something about feeling sick. But the truth was, I wasn't scared. But the truth was, I was scared because I couldn't see any strings, and I was wondering whether my actions were truly my own. Well, that was actually as enjoyable as I remember it being. I think one of my favorite types of horror, really, when I get down to it, is existential horror. The fear of the unknown, fear of not being in full control, fear of losing your bodily autonomy. One of my few stories that I actually put out that I think has any passable quality, I think it was called Ramblings of a Corpse, kind of dealt with that, life after death, and like it being like a scary concept to me, or not knowing what comes after death, like as a scary concept. And this kind of touches upon that. Not kind of, but it does touch upon that. The brevity of the story is the strength, although I think in some areas I kind of want a little bit more. I dig the interaction between Lucy. I think she should have been more engaged with the environment, if only to kind of cement the trauma that she's gone through and being exposed to it, because it does bring up her mental state and the fact that she's like disturbed by it, but I don't think we linger on it quite enough to have it be all that effective. And the moment where he wakes up and he's having breakfast and she doesn't seem to recall any of it at all, clearly indicating that she's back under the influence of the strings and it's kind of just blotted out of her memory. I kind of wanted a little bit more of a setup for there to be a juxtaposition between that and the moment where it just goes back to normal for her. What can be considered normal for her, just to kind of show how unsettling it is that after having this earth-shattering, like mind-numbing realization, it just completely like exits her mind the moment that she's right back under the control of this thing. Um, but I think that's a relatively minor complaint from my part because it still works as it is. It's a very like poignant story. It's one of those few stories where it's again like, I complain about certain aspects of it not being like expanded upon, but I would still argue that it's still just the right length. It doesn't waste any time, and the narrator, I actually quite like this style of narration, where it's like it sounds like a really down to earth kind of guy. There's no unnecessary details. It doesn't linger on certain things that it has no business lingering on. Um, Although, like, I think when I consider, like, whenever I talk about the length of a story and what I want to be expanded upon, I think that might be less of a like a detriment to the story itself, less of a complaint on my part, and more of the strength of a story where it's leaving me wanting more. And I think that a story like this could have been expanded upon and maybe made into like maybe even twice its length to really to cement this part. If I had one, well, I keep saying if I have one complaint, it's not really even a complaint. I kind of also wanted a little bit more interactions with the imp, or just to. Then again, I don't know that would really be to its benefit because you don't want to spend too much time on it. Like, if you spend too much time on this otherworldly creature, you run the risk of becoming overindulgent, and it kind of kills the initial, like, dramatic impact if you like spend too much time on it. I think it's probably around as long as it can. Maybe I don't know why. I remember a moment where the imp is like leading them around and showing them the strings that it put up. I'm just saying that was based on my vague recollection of the story, and obviously it's not here. I'm not sure that would be even better now I think about it. But besides all that, I think this is a pretty damn solid story. Definitely deserves its title as being a classic creepypasta. And going based on the level, like there's only like 49 comments. Not a lot of people really address this story. What the fuck? What is with this? Like some of this. I'm sorry. But every now and again, because I remember I was reading another story some time ago. I think what story was I trying to cover for this channel? It wasn't string theory. It was something else. I can't quite remember. Hold on. I think it was the Gristers. I was reading the Gristers and I threw that recording out because I was too tired to even articulate myself. More so than usual. I was kind of mumbling and like almost like drifting off at some parts. And I don't know. I just noticed lately in the comment section, people like have some weird complaints. It's like, oh, what is with the, damn it, what is with the awful sexist irrelevant comment made towards the teacher? Other than that, good story. Come on, fuck off. Some stupid, like I don't even think that constitutes a complaint. I don't want to even address that. Why did I even bother with this? So, yeah, this was String Theory. I thought it was a pretty solid story. I don't typically give ratings because I think that they're kind of you can't. They don't really. I don't think they like completely quantify the general quality of a story. Like writing is like a very subjective genre when you like subjective thing where like boiling down what really makes it work is a laborious endeavor sometimes. So like just giving a basic rating kind of just seems like overly simplistic. But I don't know. Like I'm gonna do a ballpark. I would say like an 8.5 because like it's effective. It does, like I said, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's straightforward to the point, unlike myself. And I actually would recommend this story to anyone who really wants to get their teeth into it. Like if you, well, obviously I can't say you recommend it after you just heard me read it. Kind of just ruined it for you with me stuttering over myself and whatnot. But if anyone wants to get their friend into horror stories, you know, on the internet, on the interwebs, the intertubes, this is one of the ones that I would recommend that they give them to cut their teeth on instead of Jeff the Disemboweler or Jimmy Two Balls or whatever new catchy killer comes out in this day and age. So this was a decent return to form, and I'm sorry if I kind of come off as low energy. Uh, I'm very tired right now. I'm trying to get my sleep schedule back on track, but whatever, you don't care about that. So, if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to, you know, voice your support any way you want to. I don't care. Uh, I don't know. What would you guys like me to cover? That'll be an interesting comment to see. I would like to hear all sorts of suggestions for like random puzzle critiques or classic puzzle critiques. And I want to point out, and I want to make it very known right now, I don't ever intend to cover like intentionally bad stories or intentionally like joke stories. Um, I might do that maybe on streams, just you know when I'm with the lads and whatnot. But this series is supposed to be me trying to read stories and dissect what I enjoy about them, and really analyze what I think could have been done to improve it. I'm not here to like you know I naturally I'm here to like have fun, but you know this is a little bit more of a serious endeavor than the streams, which for the most part are just there to just take the piss out of stuff. So just give me some suggestions for stories in the future below, and you know, rate the video, like whatever, subscribe, all that shit. So I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'm just gonna go and chill, probably play some Terraria or some kind of video game, or maybe Valheim. That's a fun game. I don't know how to end videos. Bye.